Welcome back, or if it's your first time in Dojo Studios, welcome to Dojo Studios. My name is Nicolas Cloutier. I am an editor and visual effects artist for Dojo, and this is going to be something a little bit new, something a little bit different. It's called Making the Breaking. Who here has seen breaking news? Obviously, I know everyone in Dojo has seen it. So Breaking News was a Dojo project that was filmed in 2017 and was shown last year at GFEST. It was a little bit of a different kind of vibe than what we've done before, a little more intense, character-driven, with a very powerful kind of one scene of a kaiju duking it out with a building. The point in this was it was to kind of be give an experiment to see how well we can improve the quality of our videos, of our productions, and to kind of make something that was done essentially for free. There was no money involved in making it, but make it look as impressive as possible. So in order to kind of bring that spirit out, I figured the best way to also follow up on it would be to say, hey, look, here are the techniques that I used, and you can do this too. So a little bit of stats about the film. We're not actually going to be showing the film itself because it's about 10 minutes long, and I only have an hour to do this, and I want to make sure I pack in as much as possible with instruction, because when it comes to visual effects, a lot of times it takes much longer than you expect. So I'm going to be cutting a lot of corners here and there, but hopefully you guys will get the general gist of what we're doing. So a couple of stats about the film. The film is 8 minutes and 45 seconds long. I believe that is the general count here. Yes. It's about 8 minutes and 45 seconds long. In those 8 minutes, there are 123 individual shots. That doesn't mean that we shot 123 different shots. It just means that there's edits. So there's 123 cuts. 32 of them involve visual effects, which is about 26% of the film. And so what that means is that while there's still plenty of, character moments, there's still some stuff that had to have some visual effects applied. The most common of those would be shots like this. We filmed in the middle of the day in a very hot van. I'm sure Elena can remember. They say sometimes it's just better don't have actual things on the screen, because half the time you can't actually see it. And plus you want to sometimes have that control after the fact to put in what you want. So we have screen replacements here. A little bit further on, we have screen replacements on the phone, where she's scrolling through her phone here. And I packed a lot of detail into these individual shots. So like you'll see, this is an actual screenshot of like the Apple News app, but then added in one little shot here that says Wrath of Hydron, creature lays waste to US, with some shaky cell phone video. So the idea is you can pack in whatever you want after the fact. So the first little technique I'm going to show you is how I pulled off such a screen replacement shot. So they're going to go into After Effects. Now, big warning here, I use Adobe. That's where I feel comfortable. It has, to me, a great ecosystem of apps that talk to each other. This does not mean that what I'm showing you here is exclusive only to Adobe and After Effects. If you are more comfortable working in Final Cut, if you're more comfortable working in Avid or HitFilm, or if you can't afford all these apps, I would recommend HitFilm. They have a free version which has pretty much a lot of the robust features that you would get from an Adobe Premiere or from an After Effects, but 100% free. Take these tips and apply to there. You can basically find the same type of effects in all these platforms, but I'm going to be showing you via After Effects. So I have here some footage from when we shot. It's of our character Stephanie Burr. She's in a basement while there's flickering lights, and she's looking at something on her phone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a composition out of this. Now, again, I'm not going to be going into like, hey, this is how to use After Effects. Unfortunately, I just don't have that time. So if you're a little lost, I'm sorry. It's just we got to get through all these techniques. So I've made a comp. And yeah, okay, here we go. She's looking at the screen. We put up on the day of the shoot this little green placeholder. And you can see, hopefully, that there's these little shapes and symbols on there. Essentially, those are tracking markers, so that after the fact, you can pull it into your software and take that data and track it, and then plop in whatever you want, and it matches the movement. So where do we go from here? For me, the best technique, my favorite technique, is to use a program that comes with After Effects called Mocha. So let me apply that. And another fair bit of warning. So since Breaking News has come out, there have been further developments, other techniques. So what I'm showing you is not necessarily the way that I did it back in the day. So Mocha is a plugin that goes onto your shot here. And when you click on this, it launches a separate program called Mocha. So, all right. What Mocha is, it's a planar tracker. Essentially, it looks for flat surfaces, whether they're flat like this, straight like that. It takes surfaces and tracks them and figures out the motion data based on that. And so that's why with a phone or any kind of screen, what you're most often going to want to use is a planar tracker. So the way Mocha works is you select what's called a Bezier tool. I'm going to zoom in, and all right, I'm going to draw this box around, and all right, close that. I'm going to make it square, and all right, let's track forward. Let's see what happens. Give it a second to think about what it wants to do. Okay, it's tracking. Let's see what's going on here. So that is kind of working, but I'm not very happy with it. If you notice, this little guy down here, since we started, has kind of slipped. In other words, he started, oh, maybe not so bad. But if you notice here, like over on the right side of the screen, you know, it's kind of moving away. And why is that? Well, always make sure that any kind of footage that you're doing visual effects on is locked down in some way, either on a tripod, on a gimbal, something that keeps the footage steady. When we shot this, did we have a tripod? No. Did we have a gimbal? No. So guess what? Now you have to do some extra work in order to make this shot actually work. So I'm going to get rid of this because that is just garbage. So remember what I said about these little tracking markers here. All right, so we're going to tell Mocha, hey, I want you to just focus on these surfaces with markers. And I'm also going to have you do an additional mask around these other guys too. And another one. Again, the more data that you give these programs, the better your shots will be. Let's do that. We'll go down here because those trackers are down here as well. Oops. All right. Come on. There. And oops. Go back here. Okay, and one more for good measure. All right, so let us zoom out a little bit. You can see better what we're dealing with. All right, and we're going to tell Mocha, all right, go ahead, track. And that was about halfway through. We're going to go back to the initial frame that we tracked from and track backwards. So a great way, because if you notice, I've had to scale everything up so you guys can see what's on the screen. And also, the video itself is bigger. If I zoom out, you can't really see that well. Mocha has a great way to verify that your track is solid by activating Quick Stabilize. So, all right, now I'm going to zoom in here, and it's going to keep everything relatively stable. As you can see, you get a very good sense of nothing's really slipping. Everything appears to be locked down. So, I'm happy with that. I'm just going to rename the layer phone track, and I'm going to save and close. So, all right, now what? Well, we don't see any of the work that we just did. That's because now the Mocha plugin has all that data, and you can bring that into After Effects to do more with. So I have here wrong folder. I have here a shot, a screenshot of a lock screen on an iPhone. That's a real phone number, and I encourage everybody to call that number because it's fun. I'm going to drop that into the comp. Okay, there it is. And I'm going to go back to my plate. I'm going to turn it off right now. Go back to the phone plate, and I'm going to take that tracking data, which comes down here. I'm going to make sure to click Create Track Data. I want to say, hey, phone track, that's what I want from you. Boom. And if you notice, there's these little guys that just popped up here. What can we do with that? Export it as a corner pin supporting motion blur. What a corner pin is it takes the corners of footage and manipulates it so that it twists it and turns it and distorts it into a certain shape. And it works really well with rectangular things because rectangles have corners. And so because these are animated, it will animate those corners and fake the motion that you need. So I'm also going to tell it that, hey, I want you to export to this layer here, the phone screenshot, and apply export. All right, and let's see what we did. Uh-oh, something is wrong. What happened? Where is my footage? Where did it go? Well, I can tell you what happened. When you're dealing with corner pins and any kind of that effect, your footage has to be the exact same resolution as your comp. In other words, this is a 1920 by 1080p comp, so your footage has to be 1920 by 1080p. So, all right, what does that mean? So we're going to bring in that phone shot one more time. We're going to tell After Effects, hey, I want you to fit this to the comp. Now that looks ugly, right? Who wants to look at that? Well, we're going to go back to our phone plate. We're going to say, we also have to pre-compose it. In other words, I'm nesting the footage into a separate comp and retaining, that kind of data, but also leaving the nest in this comp, and it has the exact resolution that I need. So I'm just going to say, all right, you're the phone screen comp. Move all attributes. Click. All right, it still looks ugly. Let's see what happens now. Phone screen comp, and apply export. And, you know what I forgot to do in Mocha? Because Mocha still is like, hey, what are you going to do with all this data here? I need to tell Mocha in here, this is a mistake on my part, I need to tell Mocha, hey, the corners of the surface are over here. So let me do that real quick. All right. Now again, I'm not going to go for supreme accuracy because you just don't have that kind of time. And you can verify by, hey, we're going to put on this little grid here. And if we play, In Mocha, hey, look, that grid matches the angle. It moves. So, all right, nice. We'll save. We'll go back. We will delete this corner pin data and delete everything else because I messed up. And that's one thing about visual effects. It's all trial and error. And sometimes you can still know what you're doing and make mistakes. So, all right, same thing. Create track data, make sure the phone track, good. Apply export. Ta-da! All right, we're gonna play it back and look at that. There's the phone. And there's Godzilla walking out the door. Bye, Godzilla. All right, so it's there. It looks kind of pasted on, though. It doesn't really match the scene. Well, there are a few additional steps that you can take. Number one, as you can see, you still see that green border. Kind of looks, not very convincing. And also there's a lot of motion. So if we turn on motion blur for the phone screen, in other words, it takes those frames, it looks at the next frame in addition to the current frame and blurs them together to create realistic motion. Well, for one thing, now it's very subtle, but it's there. The phone has a little bit more, it doesn't look so crisp because things in real life, when you capture them on camera, are never that crisp. The other thing is we have that, still have that ugly, ugly green glow from the actual phone screen, which is currently just underneath, sitting there, minding its own business. So how do we get rid of that? Well, a lot of people say you key it out. You do chroma keying. So we'll take some key light and tell it, hey, I want you to take this out. Okay, it's kind of doing something, but this is no good. That's still there. And also, it took away all the color from Lane's hair and around. So there are ways to improve upon this. It still won't come out exact. You can cut out that part there, and there's a lot of things that you can do. But I've found the easiest way is to go back into Mocha, because we still have this tracking data. We can still use that. So let's go to Mocha and open it up. And I'm just going to simply draw a rectangle and say boom. Okay, there we go. And I want to link it to that phone track. And now I play back. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's linked on there. It looks pretty good. And we're gonna do the same thing where we tell, or no, actually I don't have to do that this time. So we're gonna go back out of Mocha. Now, what we can do with that data is we can create a track mask. What a track mask is that it cuts things out, literally, just masks it out. But because we've used that motion data, now the mask follows what you've tracked. So I'm just gonna make another instance of the phone plate just so we have a spare. Put it on top, and I'm gonna go to matte. Visible layers, I want it to just look at layer 3, and I'm going to apply matte. I said I want to apply matte. Why are you not working? Oh, that's why. So now we just have the screen itself floating around like a Twilight Zone thing. Well, it's easy enough to do. We just invert it. Boom. All right. So it looks a little bit better. We can place our proper screen underneath. That's looking somewhat better. Still not perfect. There's more you can do. You can feather the mask. You can also turn these into actual After Effects masks, which is a great feature here. So now I can turn off Mocha. We go back to just the screen, but I can say, hey, subtract. All right, and I have a little bit better control over the mask itself. Expand it out a little bit. Let me turn those off so you can see what I'm doing. So expand out the edges, feather them. All right, and looks a little bit better, and I would probably do one more thing of a transform instance. In other words, now I'm going to transform this phone comp after the corner pin has been applied. In other words, if I was to try and scale up this footage now, it would affect the footage before the corner pin was applied and messed it all up. So to demonstrate, scale it. Ooh, that looks absolutely gross. So now I'm just going to do it from here and scale it up so it fills in the screen a little bit more. Maybe move it down. And all right, we have a relatively convincing map here. One more thing I would do with the foam plate is add some spill suppression because we still see green and there was no green in this phone screen. So what spill suppression does, the advanced, is it's just, it looks for green and just makes it grayscale. And as you can see, even just toggling on and off, if you notice Lynn's hair over here, on, off, on, see, the green is gone. So, pretty close to what you would find in the final shot. Still more stuff you can do, but we're gonna move on to the big, what I'm calling the big shot. So, in the film, we have Stephanie and Glenn. They're a reporter and a photojournalist. They're trying to set up their live shot when suddenly there's a big explosion, as you can see here, and they know that a kaiju is coming, so they run away. They go into a basement. They realize, oh, this is not a good place to be when there's a giant monster that can just topple this building at any time. So they run out the door and encounter Hydron. And so this is an actual live action plate with the camera turning. That is right outside this door. So again, another thing when you're filming any kind of video, always make sure to know your location. We used the Crowne Plaza O'Hare to the max. Every single scene that you see, save for one towards the end, was shot in this hotel or on the grounds. So how did we do that? Let's go and find out. So I'm going to close this. All right, we want this shot here. I've already selected what we're going to use. So it's a little bit different from the actual finished film. We have Glenn running to the camera, and the camera pans up and looks at this empty sky, just waiting for a kaiju to be plopped in there. But as you will find out, you can't simply just plop in a kaiju because the camera moves. And again, they say when doing any visual effects shots, always have your camera locked down either on a tripod or on a gimbal. On the day of, did we have a tripod? No. Did we have a gimbal? No. So this footage is extremely shaky. It was shot on a GoPro. And so lesson learned. Of course, I didn't have the time or the budget to get a gimbal, and you live with what you have, but it means you have to do a little bit more work. So let's get to the fun stuff. So the way we do this is I'm going to use now After Effects' own camera tracker. So let's just click Track Camera. It's a pretty robust feature for being part right out of the box of After Effects. So it analyzes in the background, and you can see up here, it's initializing. It's going to start analyzing the frames. And minute now. There we go. So, it's working pretty fast. 186 frames total. We'll wait for it to do its thing, 20 seconds. This is always the part about, if you're doing a live demonstration when you're getting to like, hey, let's, have some moments of silence while the computer is doing its thing, or I just keep on talking. All right, and now it's solving the camera. So it's basically what it looked at was it looked in the scene, as you can see these little dots here. It was looking around in the scene and finding feature points and then looking ahead and keeping them in place. So, all right, there's a bit of a problem though. If you notice down here, these guys are off. You know, it's doing a pretty decent job. However, I can't go all the way to a certain point and then be like, oh yeah, by the way, we have to redo this and backtrack. So I'm just gonna tell you right now. Does anybody notice something about the way that this was shot with the GoPro? What is this footage? What do you notice about this footage? And notice, I'm saying, I'm being very blunt here. It's GoPro. So what do you notice about this footage? Notice this?
It's wide.
It's very wide. It's a wide lens. In order to do that, you have the lens which is curved, and you see more, but it's all fun here, Dojo. But this should be a straight line, and it is not. This is not some kind of distortion on the screen itself. This is actually distortion in the lens. And when you're trying to do any type of camera tracking, you will find that lens distortion is your biggest enemy. So either find a lens that shoots wide and doesn't have lens distortion, and they cost you a lot of money, or in After Effects, you remove that distortion. So we're gonna take off the camera tracker for right now, and we're gonna pre-compose this shot. We're gonna say yes, move all the attributes, okay, and we're gonna open the new composition. So basically, we're gonna be keeping this comp for later, but we're gonna go one level down and do some work to it before we add the camera tracker. So let's click OK. All right, so in here, we're gonna add this effect called optics compensation. And we're gonna reverse lens distortion. So what this is gonna do is it's gonna kind of straighten things out. Well, how do you know if things are straight or not? Well, to do that, we're gonna add another layer, call this grid, and generate a grid so we can see straight lines. All right, so as you can see, I'm illustrating it now, this should be a straight line. It dips down and under. So with optics compensation applied, reversing lens distortion, now I'm going to start to undo that. Oh, okay. Until you get a nice straight line. I found that 65 for this shot is kind of the magic number. Now obviously, with these types of shots, if somebody is really close to the camera and off to the side, they get really distorted and they look kind of like SpongeBob. So be very wary of this effect. Do not use it willy-nilly. You got to know that it will affect your footage. But now we have this perfectly, almost perfectly straightened out comp. We're going to delete the grid, and we're going to go back to the top comp, and as you can see, now those changes have been applied. And now we're going to apply the camera tracker. So track camera, and I'm going to tell it under the advanced, I want to just do some detailed analysis. So essentially it's looking for more points. It's going to work a little bit harder, but in the end you get a better result. So, let's see. And even so, even with having to look for more advanced features, it's still moving relatively fast. Again, it all comes down to, with this type of stuff, you know, they say if you want to go out and make a film, you have all the tools at your disposal, and that's absolutely true. You can make a really good looking film with a cheap camera, you know, you bought from Best Buy for $200. You can make a really terrible looking film using a camera that costs $2,000. It comes down to how you use the equipment. When it comes to visual effects, that's where that kind of has to go. Well, in order to do this, you need a really good computer that has horsepower to render these effects. So this moved really fast because this computer is relatively new. It has, you know, insane RAM. It has a good graphics card, so it can do some pretty heavy lifting. And so, you know, to that end, I would say if this is something that you're interested in doing, you got to put in the money for it. Otherwise, you're not going to get the results that you want. So now we have some better tracking data. As you can see here, we have all these little guys here on the building. I'm going to increase the size here so we can see them better. All right. So, all right, what do we do with these little dots? We're going to tell After Effects, hey, I want you to take that tracking data and turn it into a virtual camera. So we're going to say, hey, all right, you right here, you're like the closest dot we have. Right click, I'm going to say create null and camera. Okay, click. And as you can see, if you disable this, you'll see this little red guy here. That is what's called a null object. It is just an empty placeholder for storing data. And as you can see, as I move around, it is pretty much locked into the footage as well. So, you know, the camera pans like this, and it basically knows where it's supposed to be. So you can see there's a little bit of, and again, that comes from, you know, this wasn't shot on a lockdown source, so there's going to be some noise in your movement, unfortunately. So, what can we do with this? Well, we have here some footage of Hydron, and that's our friend Paul here, and he is smashing the building, and his jaw suddenly falls off. Unfortunately, that was a real blooper that happened on the day. We were able to cut around it, but still it's funny to look at when you're editing it. So I'm going to use that shot for this.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome. So some important considerations here. When you're shooting footage that's going to be composited, especially with kaiju stuff or anything in general, always use the same camera with the same lens, set at the same focal point. In other words, we shot, because I knew that we were going to be shooting Hydron's footage on a GoPro, because at the time, it was the only camera that I had that was capable of shooting at 60 frames per second. And those, if anybody is into how they make kaiju movies, you know that in order to create the illusion of mass and scale, you have to shoot at a high frame rate. So I knew that the only camera that I had was a GoPro that shot at 60 frames per second, which meant that I had to shoot the human plate with the same camera at the same setting. So that also helps us a little bit when it comes to compositing it. Because now when you put it together, because it's the same camera, same lens, it blends better. You're already halfway there. So knowing that we're using the same footage, same camera, we know that if we plop this in here, we're going to have to apply the same octus compensation. So we're also going to pre-compose and put that in a nested sequence. And we're going to say octus compensation, 65, reverse the lens distortion. All right, so now as you can see, the building on the platform is now straight. All right, so we're going to go back to the shot here, and we're going to tell After Effects, hey, I know this is a 2D layer, but I want you to make it 3D. And this little guy down here, oh, where did he go? He disappeared. That's because now this layer is in 3D space, and it's very far away. But we have a way of figuring out where it's supposed to go because we have these null objects with data. So we're going to say, hey, I want you to go, I'm going to take this position data, copy it, go to the Hydron footage, paste it, and now, whoa, that looks really big, and that's because it is super close, and now I have to scale this way down. So, all right, it's a little bit better, but now that I know that it is where it kind of should be, I'm just going to move it over, lift it up, whoop. All right, and I'm going to rotate it so it kind of looks a little bit more like it's supposed to be there in line. Okay. All right, and so, I don't know why it's doing that, but So, okay, it's there. Ooh, why are you doing that? Because you're not totally on there. Okay. Oops. Sorry, a little technical difficulty here. Glitch. Sorry, like I said, this is all live, and things can sometimes just decide they don't want to work. Oh, that's because there's some noise in the tracking data, which unfortunately, because I did this live, it's just there. I can't seem to rectify that. So we're just going to go to where it looks good now. Boom. All right. So let's let that play through. All right, so it is pretty lock solid where it's supposed to be. There's Hydron with his hanging jaw. Let's let that play through, and then it'll play back in full speed. Come on now. All right, so it's there. It's locked in, but it still just looks like I plopped something on top of this footage and called it a day. We have to do compositing. So all right, let's do that. So we're going to go into the Hydron comp, and what's the first thing that we have to do? Anybody got any ideas? Any thoughts?
Fix the jaw.
No, I'm not that advanced. We're not going to get into that today. One of the big things that gives it away that, hey, this is something that was just kind of slapped in there is the fact that there's all of this sky just kind of, there. So doesn't match, you can sort of see the scene. So we're going to get rid of that. So let's do that. For this, I'm going to use key light and with a little spill suppression. And I'm going to tell key light, I want you to get rid of this. Boom. All right, that's pretty decent. Again, I'm not going to get into like super advanced because we only have so much time. So we're going to have to live with a few of these little artifacts. You have the clouds here. This is a little bit less than perfect. So I will, before we move on, do some quick cleanup. I'm going to tell Keylight that I want to look at the screen matte. So everything that's white is what's staying in the shot. Everything that's black is what's been taken out. So you can see this little white static here. That means that, well, we just have to tell Keylight to get rid of more of it. So I'm increasing the screen gain. We're reintroducing some things here because there was reflection.
Yep.
Whether or not you realize that light will play tricks on you, you never know how it's going to work. So when you're shooting these types of videos, always be prepared. And you're not always going to have the comfort of controlling your light. And this was a really great learning curve because we just shot this outside in the sun. And we learned the sun is very bright and very powerful. So it reflects off of things in ways that you wouldn't expect. So down here, parts of the building are missing. So we're going to bring those back if we can by turning down the clip white. All right, that's looking pretty good. So we'll go back to intermediate results. A little bit of key cleaner that takes away some of the holes, and advanced spill suppressor. All right, good. I'm gonna say I'm happy with that for right now. So there he is. He is in our scene, and there is still something wrong though. Anybody want to take a wild guess? What's wrong? Why does this still look unnatural? It what?
Looks like he's standing on top of the building.
Looks like he's standing on top of the building. Well, not only that, it's what's going on here. This is supposed to be a wall. Is he just kind of standing in the middle of the wall, or is he supposed to be behind the wall? And the answer is yes, he's supposed to be behind the wall. So how do we say to After Effects, I want you to take this and just keep this in front, and we'll keep everything else in the back? Well, there's a solution for that, and it involves going back into my friend Mocha. So let's apply Mocha. There are other ways of doing this. They say, you can make track maths and go frame by frame. We don't have the time. Again, I'm saying that a lot. We just don't have the time to do frame by frame animation. So I'm going to show you how to do this as quickly as possible. So, all right, I'm going to tell Mocha that I like this right here and here. Oh, you know what? I'm going to go all the way down. Come on. Wait. Work with me, Mocha. Let's go. There we go. All right, and let's say we want to use pixels. All right, and track that. Give it a second to do its thing. Now I already know from having done this before that it's relatively imperfect, but I'm just showing you that you get pretty good results to start right away. As you can see, it's holding on rather well. It's slipping down here. But what you really want is that tracking data. So let's let this do its thing. Almost there. All right, and we'll have it go backwards. And I know it's going to fail here because of the camera turn, and there's a way around it. I just won't be able to show you that today. And also because of the final comp, we are not using this part of the turn. Oh, actually, that's not too bad. All right. So when it comes to Mocha, it's using, you can basically say, hey, Mocha, I like that tracking data. Thank you for doing that. I'm going to keep that, but I also want to move these points. So let's just take a quick second, and we're going to move that up here. What did I just do? Did I ruin the tracking data? The answer is no. It's still there. I just also created a keyframe. And let's zoom this out so you can actually see. So it's going to play through, and when it does the turn, it stays relatively lock solid. So you can do keyframing and motion tracking at the same time independently of each other. And that is a really nice feature that you cannot do with tracks and tracking in After Effects alone. So all right, let's use that. I'm happy with it. I save and close out. Make a new instance of the background plate and place that on top of Hydron. All right, and we still don't see it. That's because we have to apply our matte. There. So now there's a little bit, there's actual perspective. You have a real world object that is in front of something you've composited in. And again, this is not perfect. You can still see the line there, and that's where finesse, which is time, comes in. And so now the hard work is done, essentially, in this shot. From here, because we have all this tracking data, we can add whatever we want. So let's put in, we're gonna do some, we definitely need to have, when the brick here hits, we wanna have a little poof, an explosion of some kind. So let's put in a dirt charge. It's already pre-keyed, which is nice. So boom, all right, that's basically where we want it to hit. All right, and we're gonna say, hey, you're a 3D layer, and we want you to have the same relative position as the Hydron comp. So let's put you there. Whoa, scale that way down. All right. All right, and of course, well, this still looks very unnatural. I mean, you can see the line here. Why is that? Because we need to put it underneath the wall. And boom, there's a little dirt charge. Okay, cool. From there, if you wanted to, you can scale it up, make it a little bit bigger. Because these are giant monsters. This can't just be like little monsters, right? And what's one other thing that we need? We need an explosion. So let's put in an explosion. Oops. And we're going to tell, hey, I want you to flip around the other side because it just looks more natural. All right, so again, we're going to take that footage, the position data, and plop it here. Oops, I forgot to turn it into 3D layer. My bad. Boom. Scale it down. Okay. Whoa, that's a little something weird going on here, but that's all right. We're going to fix it. I think that's because I put it in negative scale. There we go. All right. Still looks a little funky. Let's see. What am I looking at here? Okay, there we go. Oh, it's upside down. Huh? Whoops. There, okay. So now we can basically bring it out in front a little bit more, scale it, twist it up, because we want to be able to have it be in perspective more. All right, but you get the idea. So with this data, you can put whatever you want, including, where is it? I have one more fun little thing that I had here. You know, they say when you're one of my absolute heroes was Mr. Shinji Higuchi, the special effects director for the Gamera trilogy and Shin Godzilla, and he happened to be around when we were filming this particular scene with Hydron, and had a chance to meet him, and he was very kind to be present for while we were filming this. And they say Pixar, it didn't happen. Well, there's Higuchi doing his thing. So let's go back to this shot, and oh wow, now we have Higuchi here being a totally badass kaiju. And there's some other kaiju that's just kind of walking around the back of the screen. But all right, so obviously, far from perfect, but hopefully you have a sense of what you should be doing in order to make your special effects shots work. And there's one other step. Whenever you think you're done with your special effects shot, you're not, because a lot of people forget that it's time to do color correction. And I just don't have time to show you about color correction. But that's where basically you look at the colors in all your different shots and you match them. And that's a very painstaking frame-by-frame process sometimes. Like this particular shot, I discovered with a GoPro, GoPros you can't control their exposure. So if you point a GoPro directly at the sun, it will close its exposure down and get darker. And that's exactly what happened in the shot, is if you leave it up long enough, you see the sky starts to darken. So in the final film, with those shots, I had to not only match the color, but I also had to match the exposure frame by frame. So always remember that when you've done your compositing, you've done all the fun, cool stuff of like you can add in whatever you want, 3D graphics, like okay, I have a minute, I can quickly throw this on. We're gonna put in a 3D building, using a plugin called Element 3D, which has been a game changer for the visual effects community. OBJ, yes. We'll just kind of pick one of these. Yep, good. And tell it to go to the bottom. Normalize size. We have a digital building. What can we do with that? Well, there it is in 3D space. Let's real quick just, I'm not going to go through step by step how you make this look good because I want to be able to take some questions if anybody has them. We're going to move that here and scale it up. And we're going to put it behind Gucci. We can maybe do a little bit more rotation. Come on, where are you? There. All right, make it stand up a little bit. You have full control, and even with this, you have to make sure that your colors match. You have to match the lighting. So anytime that you add more things in, you have to realize that there's more work to be done. So, all right, let's see how this shot looks now. Oops. Let's fill the screen here. So, the tools are at your disposal to make whatever kind of shot you want. So I shot on a GoPro for no money, 2 different plates, 2 different elements, and from there you can get stock footage of explosions, depth charges. If you want to fork over a little bit of money and I tell you this is worth it, you can add in digital buildings and extend out your world, extend your set. You can go further. You don't like the sky? Replace the sky. The world is at your fingertips. So with that, any questions? No question is to, no, any question? Anybody? Oh, we got one right here.
Is it possible to replace it?
What's up?
Is it possible to replace the human with some sort of kaiju to make it look like a kaiju?
Well, you weren't here earlier. Were you? Because that's what we did. See? So, yes, you can. Like I was saying, the tracking data, once you do the motion tracking, you do all that hard work, basically now you can put whatever you want because you have the data that says, hey, this is supposed to be here and here. You can just plop in whatever elements you want. So, any other questions? Anybody? Oh, over here.
All right, so I've noticed that you have your kaiju destroying this building here.
Yes.
How much planning and what kind of cuts did you have to make sure that it collapsed exactly the way you wanted it to?
I'm glad you asked that question. So, and this actually rolls into a point that I did not get to make. Because we wanted to make sure that everything worked as it should, we planned. We planned everything down to a T. I had a shooting schedule. Basically, we knew exactly what scene we would be filming, excuse me, and when and where. We were rehearsing lines in between. So we knew that from, I think, like 9 to 12, Saturday morning, we were going to be setting this shot up, and by 11:30 the latest, shooting it. Because literally, it just took less than 10 minutes to shoot. And so we had to make sure that the building was going to collapse the way we wanted to. And that involves scoring it. That means you pre-cut. You pre-cut, like it's all styrofoam, and you can see a little sheet here. It's a washing cleaner, washer box, so on the inside. So, and also there's floors. We wanted to make sure that everything just collapsed the way that we intended it to. So the answer is yes, it involves a lot of pre-planning. And that's why Breaking News took pretty much a year to make, not because we were filming it most of the time, but because we were planning it.
So if I could interject, Nick and I had quite a bit of conversations about how the shot would be framed, and I'm the one who built the building that was designed to collapse in only one particular way. We built an interior that was collapsed with exposed girders and whatnot with rubble preloaded. So yes, it was all planned and built that way, and it was for that one shot.
So, before I came out here, I did a test basically a test run through. And again, we did this live, and I couldn't go back and fix certain things, but this is what I did in relatively an hour and 10 minutes. You'll notice that the sky was even replaced. So, that's the kind of the thing with computers. You never know how they're gonna play with you. Sometimes it will just decide, hey, I don't want to work with you right now. You'll have to come back later. So, yeah. Any other questions? I know you had your hand up. Do you still have a question? Okay. Anybody else? No? All right. Thank you, everybody. I hope you take these tips to heart and go out and make your own kaiju films or any kind of films. Go out and create because the world is yours. Thank you.